Right. Welcome back again. Well, or welcome at all. This video's topic is going to be about God and if God exists. I will be talking about and referring to things in my past two videos, mostly the second one, but of course the first one is almost like absolute fundamental before starting talks about ideas and discussions like this. And again, that's just regarding how much we know versus how much we believe. So, does God exist? I will start with doing a similar timeline like I did with the second video about our understanding of reality and existence. And yeah, I'll do that and it'll make sense as I go along. Well, hopefully it does. So initially you have, as it's told and understood, nothing, and then the Big Bang, and then everything, right? As I said in the previous video, and I won't rehash that stuff. I won't waste your time. So if you don't know this, I don't want to waste the people who have watched that video. I don't want to waste their time. So if you haven't done that, get on it. So you have nothing, and then you have everything with the Big Bang. Okay. As I said, it doesn't make sense. You can't have nothing, as far as I understand, and as far as it makes sense and is observed in reality, nothing at all, ever, and especially you can't have something come from nothing. So again, the simple thing is, and this, I'm sure everybody's thought about this and debated this or heard the debate about this, Big Bang, just everything from nothing versus God creating reality like it's written about in Genesis, in the Bible. Well, I think it's just, and this is a video where I won't be as manic as I was in the previous video. I'll try and keep it low key, not fire anyone up, because it's important. I'm talking about something that's even more important than the other two videos. So I want to be respectful. They go hand in hand. Why does God and reality go hand in hand? Common sense would say because God made reality, right? If you looked at it at that avenue, it is a simple fact that everything goes back to God because he created everything. I'm not saying you have to jump on this boat straight away. I will get into detail about why these things make sense. I'm not asking you to jump on this ship. Just having this as the fundamental, easy thought, not that you should jump on it now, to go with. If God created reality, then all of reality points back to God. It's as simple as that. He's the author and the architect of all of it. Right. But if he did not, you will not find God anywhere. You can't have it both ways. Either God exists and created reality, and as the author and the penmanship that he did in the structure of it all, it'll point back to him, because you're like, oh, well, someone has written, designed, and made this. Makes sense. If God doesn't exist, you cannot find him anywhere. Anywhere. You cannot have something that ever points to a something that is like God, because that doesn't exist. So it would be your imagination. It would be a wrong interpretation. Right? There's no middle ground. Again, there's only one reality, one truth. God either exists or he doesn't. That's it. That's nice and simple. You cannot have anywhere in between. It doesn't work. Again, I talked about that in the other videos. I'm not going to rehash it. So, as I did in the second video, where I talked about the timeline of things, I'm going to talk about the timeline of things the same way, but in that video where it was, for some of those things, as we understand it, impossible, well, let's postulate and think about another idea. Right, so you have, and I'll keep this one simple, everybody knows this, you have a God, which is omnipotent, everywhere, everything, has everything within him, is all places and all time, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure, let's try and understand who God is. And he says, like in the Genesis account, or even the Tanakh, it's just the Old Testament, that he spoke reality into existence. made it, right? And again, we have nothing, which, going from the scientific account, would make sense if God wasn't there, right? Because there was nothing besides God. Okay. Well, God is everything, so everything was already there, which makes sense because everything comes out of nothing. Well, God is everything. He makes everything, has everything within himself, so he puts his everything, makes everything into the nothingness, the void that was. Okay. And even you have the Big Bang. And I'm sure anyone who has any form of imagination, and we need to use it in this regard, because when we're talking about the creation of the universe, seeing as no one was there, most of us can't even comprehend the complexities of how it must begin, and no one can explain how it does objectively, truthfully. You imagine there's a Big Bang. Well, God says, let there be light. What does that sound like? Ever seen an explosion? Right. That makes more sense. So we can use something like Occam's razor, right? You have the fantasy, the possibility, the imaginary impossibility of nothingness, and then everything coming from that nothingness, which is the Big Bang concept, right? And we'll just stick with that one because I don't even want to touch multiverse nonsense, and it is not nonsense, and even more nonsense than that is the simulation thing. It's ridiculous, and I'll say why it's ridiculous, because there has to be a higher level for something to simulate. Well, where does that higher level come from? You just literally, it's like the going around in circles again. Who made that higher level? But Occam's razor is you have this stupid idea, impossibility, that there's nothing and then everything comes into a Big Bang. More likely it is the case that you have someone that causes that. You have a causation, right? You have the catalyst. God is the catalyst, right? You have someone to make the bang. You have a something to make the bang. That just makes more sense. It objectively makes more sense. As we look at reality and understand reality, you can't have nothing. Nothing doesn't exist. It's not possible. And then everything comes out of that nothing. It's not possible. That's not possible, objectively. So what's more possible, more likely, is that you have a something, and you have a something that can create everything. Because everything was made. That's the universe and all the matter and everything we see. So it would have to be a something, and it doesn't even have to be God, but it has to be something that can produce everything. Therefore, it's greater than everything that we observe and witness, and even the things that we can't observe and witness. So what does that sound like? It sounds like a God figure. Right. That is more likely. It is a more sensible, more rational outlook. You have something that creates something. Yeah, that's how reality works. Right. The next thing you move on to is then the formation. And I will start putting in here the perfect and balanced formation of everything. And it is so good, so precise. Mwah, chef's kiss, the way that everything panned out. And I mean from the very beginning, as it is understood and we hypothesize how it goes. Mate, it's too perfect. It's organized. It is calculated, organized, and then near perfect. And I only say near perfect because people can calculate, and I will trust them to a degree. To a certain degree, we're like, well, if it was any of this, it wouldn't be perfect. Yeah, right. And no one could ever get near that. No one. And they could be wrong. They could be mathematically off. Their calculations could be wrong. Not the actual perfection is wrong, but their calculations of it, which is more likely to be the case because humans are very wrong a lot of the time. Anyway, I'll just use a perfect. I'll just say perfect because I don't want to insult God. A perfect expansion, cooling, movement, distribution, everything of the universe. But then hold on, or we get to the fact that now there's more matter than there is antimatter, as it's understood. How? Why? We don't know. We don't know. It doesn't make sense. Physically, it doesn't make sense. Well, maybe if, again, we go with the fact that there was someone organizing this, they understood, because they're the creator of the thing, if there's a perfect balance of matter and antimatter, then nothing can exist really besides energy and entropy. Would it be entropy? Be on the way to it would just be energy at that point. That's not much of an existence. It isn't. So God, or a God figure, the creator, someone goes, I need to put more matter into this equation to create these things that I wish to create. Oh, wait. It's very uncanny how much it sounds like the Genesis creation story. God wanted something to be made, so he formed it. He spoke it and said, be made. And it went, yes, boss. So he's creating matter, creating things, okay? He's just creating matter. That's as simple as it is. So we have an imbalance of matter and antimatter. How? Again, we don't know. It doesn't make sense. It seems like it should not be that way. So, again, we can't even come up with an idea of how that happens, or a good one. So what makes more sense is that you follow, again, the path of, well, there's this God figure, and he just creates matter because he is everything within himself, and he can create matter because he is the author of the universe. He's the maker of the laws. So he can just, boom, make more matter. Well, that would make more sense. That would make sense. That's easy to comprehend. That's it. On to the next thing. Then you have life, which again, I think is probably the biggest and easiest thing to latch onto. Again, I talked about it in the other video. Where does life come from? We don't know. We cannot, nowhere. We're just like, it just happened. No. Or aliens. Get lost. Let's look at reality. Almost, can I say almost? No, all. As far as I understand, all life comes from pre-existing life. To animals, or humans, coitus. Two animals, beings have coitus and create offspring. Trees, seeds, simple. We all understand it. I don't need to go on and on. Life comes from pre-existing life. That is everywhere that we observe. Even single-celled organisms that divide. Well, the organism is alive to begin with, and it creates more life. Right. So what we can observe in reality is life comes from pre-existing life in all forms. All forms. So wouldn't it make sense that the first life, even if you wanted to go single-cell nonsense, and I think it is nonsense, but it's possible, right? I'm not going to say it's not impossible. Single cell, let's go single cell. Where does that come from if we want to stick to a scientific biased mindset? Well, pre-existing life. And that's why I think the ridiculous idea and thought is, well, alien seeded life. There's higher forms. All you're doing is replacing God with aliens. What? How does no one see that? Well, I'm not saying no one sees that. How does this person say that and not go, I'm being a buffoon? I'm just replacing God with an alien. That's all I'm doing. Who made the alien? If the alien is a material thing and here in this universe, who made it? This is the one where you really have to, especially with, again, you understand that all life is a sequence of instructions, genetic instructions. Who wrote the code? Again, common sense would say an intelligent something wrote the code. An organized, purpose-filled something wrote the code. And again, when things divide and procreate, they lose information. Even if the first single-celled thing had all of the genetic information for all of this, it would be lost and diluted. That's what happens through division and procreation. I already talked about that. But getting back to it, for it even to exist, common sense says it comes from pre-existing life. God is alive. The thing is alive, right? Whatever the creative thing, if we go back onto that track of thought, that makes more sense. That is more logical. It is. Don't talk about, not scientific. No, not scientific. It's saying, magical aliens. Besides the aliens, oh, it just happened, accident, friggin' built itself. That is nonsensical. That is nonsensical garbage. What is more rational, and that we can observe in reality, is that life comes from pre-existing life, and that this life that is in all forms is a written code, calculated, intelligent, written thing. So wouldn't it make sense and be common sense to say that a God figure created that thing? He wrote it and went, "Ooh, that's how I want things to be." That's that. And have a sippy of water. Riled up. Right, so touching on evolution, and again, evolution is a bigger one, so like I did with the previous video, I'll keep it generalized. Evolution is not necessary for life. Why? Again, look around. Are you alive? Are you existing? Can things procreate without evolving? Yes. Yes, they do. Everything does. Without evolving, without showing traits of evolution, without relying on it, things are alive, and they continue to be alive and continue to make more life. So evolution is not necessary for life to go on, for life to be made, for life to adapt. It's not necessary. Right, so what do you go there from? You didn't need a single cell organism to freaking go through the fight of its life to try and become something that it wasn't. The underdog, the single cell organism that becomes a blue whale. It is not necessary. And again, it's, and I would say mathematically not possible. And I've explained this, so hopefully that makes sense if you watch the other videos. Not possible. Doesn't work. Besides, you can't even get there in the first place without a God system, as far as we understand currently. So, if you have, going back to the Genesis creation story, why would it be so obtuse a thought if you have a God who can create, not can, does create everything? Why could he not just create all forms of life in their current formation? Why? And people like to say, because we can observe that the universe is so freaking old. Fine, well, let's just postulate that. Let's say the universe is really, really old. Well, there wasn't a time frame in the Bible. Okay, there's not a time frame in the Bible at that point. Time frame starts when Adam and Eve get kicked out of Eden. So let's just say they were around for 13.7 billion years, just chilling out. That's a possibility. Oh, but they would have, humans don't live. Well, if you read the Bible, yeah, it's recorded that humans did live a lot longer back then. And this is even after they fell out of the perfection that was Eden. So in perfection, that is Eden, they didn't die. There was no death. Nothing died. That's why once they fell, God said the reward is death. So prior to that, there is no death. So they can't die. Well, at least not naturally. I'm not sure if they can off themselves, but that's a different story. In a way they did, didn't they? Brought death upon themselves. Right, getting back on track. The universe could be that old. It could be. Because God, I don't think that it is. But it is possible. God could create the Big Bang, and the Big Bang could have been a slow bang. Doesn't make sense because God talks about, or it's recorded, that these things happen in a matter of 6 days. And I'm not here, I'll talk about it in a sec. You don't know. You don't know, you weren't there. So you don't know if it was 6 days and then the seventh day of rest, or you don't know if it was 13.7 billion years. You don't know. But again, the scientific facts and ideas are not possible to our current understanding. The God aspect of it is more possible and more likely and makes more sense. So wouldn't it be more likely to go, well, if that all makes more sense, well, probably it's then the 6 days with seventh day of rest versus the billion years of whatever the heck the scientists think happened. Oh, but we have carbon dating. Oh boy, yeah. Has that never been wrong? Educate yourself. And even if you don't want to educate yourself, carbon dating is looking at things over such a short time scale. It's taking something that, let's say you know it is 300 years old, maybe more. It's hard because it would have to be recorded. If you say, oh, we know it's this old, I have so many debates with that. But let's just use something that's a few hundred years old, because that's generations, that's humans passed down by human, this, that, and the other, and it's recorded, right? But if you wanted to go that aspect, well, then you know what else is recorded? The Bible, over a short period of time, less than 2,000 years. The New Testament, at least. Why do we trust that? That's very well recorded and kept. So let's not go 2,000 years old. Definitely can't go something that's 2,000 years old. Let's go something that's a few hundred years old. That is such a short time scale to test something, to then judge the decay of how things happen over billions of years. No. You're trying to say, oh, because we can see how something decays, carbon-14 atom decays, over a few hundred years, and we can see it's very consistent, even though we haven't tested it under a ridiculous variable of variables, different number of variables, that is the universe and places it could even be on Earth. Oh, we're sure that it'll decay at this rate all the time, and it always has decayed at that rate. What arrogance, what absolute garbage nonsense. Besides the fact, again, educate yourself. It has been proven, oh no, you know what, it actually can, the time frame can be altered depending on the circumstance and the chemical exposures of it. Whoa, what a surprise, like everything else in reality. Going back to it, wouldn't it make more sense if the whole God thing, creating all the things that are impossible over here with science, understanding generally, wouldn't it make more sense that it's just, well, 6 days, because God can create everything, he can do everything comes from him, so yeah, he just makes everything. And it is possible, because once everything is made, it is to some degree very much like this, and this works and has worked for a long time. So if God made it like that, well then, done. Oh, that's right, that's what he does, he rests on the seventh day. Once he's done, he's like, it's all done, it's all perfect. That makes sense. No need for evolution. Besides the fact that it's not talked about in the Bible, and even if you didn't want to go in the Bible, evolution doesn't make sense mathematically. And there's a whole bunch of other factors. I'll do an evolution video. I will. It fires me up. Okay, let's move on from there. So let's shift the time frame to now, right? Well, let's look at now, because that's the best time to look at, because it's when you're perceiving reality and what you can do with it. It's the only time that you have. What can I see now and do now? Besides, hey, we got this video. This is a now thing that's helpful. That proves God. It shows God, shows this handiwork. And oh my goodness, my answer to that is look hard enough and deep enough anywhere, at anything. You'll find God. Why? Because once again, going back to the very start, either God exists and everything comes from God, therefore everything is related to and taken back to God, or he doesn't exist and nothing can be equated nothing can be equated back to God if he doesn't exist. Right. So let's have a look at some of the things that we have now that you could do right now in a very general sense. I think the easiest and most comprehensive thing would be this. There's, in my short time on Earth, and as an adult as well, the amount of misunderstanding about the Bible, what it is, when it was written, how it was written, in what language, how it was, and what it is upsetting. Upsetting. Really, really upsetting. There is such nonsensical things, arrogant, ignorant, ridiculous things I've heard in my short time on this planet that people say about the Bible, and to them that one little thing, like things like, if the Bible's written more than 2,000 years ago by Jews or Israelites or whatever, why do all the guys have British white names like Mark and John? And I've not just heard this once. And I won't use heaps of examples, but the people who say these things are so confident in what they're saying, like, oh, gotcha, you're an idiot. It's probably written really recent, and I don't know how an adult can be so stupid, so uneducated, and then so confident in their stupidity and lack of education. And it is hard to help people like that. Certainly possible. But there is such a misunderstanding about the Bible. And the reason is because people like that do not want to understand it. They don't want to educate. They don't want to learn about it. They don't want the truth. It's as simple as it is. It doesn't matter what. And this is a point, I guess I'll start now. I can make another video on it. I think I will. Is that if you do not want to know the truth, if you do not want to see reality for what it is, it doesn't matter what you or anyone else, God inclusive, does, you will not see it, have it, understand it, or gain it. You will not. Ever. Ever. Maybe when you die and you meet God and then you're forced to see truth and reality because Christ is truth. Yeah, okay, so maybe when you die. Only when you die. I mean, like after you're dead. But up until that point in this life, it does not matter. And it's a wasted effort on people like that. Now, to know if someone is like that or not is almost impossible because you can't know someone's mind and heart entirely. But what I'm saying is that these videos and these topics and what I'm doing is not for people like that. If you do not want and do not have the capacity to be able to accept truth when it doesn't sit right with you, there's nothing I can do for you. There's nothing I can do for you. Just that. And I like to use the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's fine. It's a simple story of there's a rich man, has everything per se. Lazarus, who's poor, covered in sores, doesn't have anything, and sits out the front of the gate of the rich man. Just that's where his sleeping, homeless spot is. Rich man dies, Lazarus dies, goes up to Abraham. Doesn't say specifically where, it says goes to the bosom of Abraham. Abraham is the forefather of all the Israelites. He's like the daddy, after God, after Noah. Noah doesn't get enough credit. And then the rich man goes to hell. And the rich man says to Lazarus and Abraham, can you please give me a drop of water down here to quench the burning? And they say, well, there's a void between you and us. We can't do that. The rich man goes, well, can you at least warn my brothers that hell exists, this place is real, so that they don't come here? And Abraham goes, well, they've already got the scriptures and the laws and the books of Moses. It wouldn't matter if I raised the dead before their eyes. If they don't believe that, they're not going to believe then. And that's the point and crux of this story, is that it doesn't matter. And I know people personally, a lot of people who have had inexplicable miracles happen to them. Inexplicable stuff. And I'll make a video on miracles, maybe even today, that have had them happen and have told me, what do I do with this? Like, this thing's happened, and like they're hoping that I'll give them a scientific explanation of it. I'm just like, what do you think? Like, what do you want from me? Oh, it's obvious what's happened here. Oh yeah. Oh boo-hoo, a miracle. God's proven that he exists. I'm not talking small stuff. No, I'll talk about it later on. I'm back. And then those people go on to be faithless people. Thankless, faithless people. And some of them even go on to do something even more insulting and like worship other gods. False gods. Worship the planet, or I don't know, Mother Nature or something. Which I got no problem with Mother Nature, because technically I don't mean as a god, don't get me wrong. God created the earth, but he built us out of the earth, so we come from it. It provides for us. God is the provider initially, but what I'm saying is that it does not matter what happens to people. Like, use Judas. Judas is probably the best example. He was literally living life with God incarnate, Christ, seeing all the stuff that he did, hearing all the things that he did, having all the arguments that maybe he was thinking in his head, oh, what about this, And then one of the Pharisees would come say, oh, what about this idea? And Christ would just obliterate them. He had the perfect opportunity to be like, oh, this is God, God exists, and yada yada. And it didn't matter. It did not matter. I don't know how, but there's the point. There's the proof. And again, coming back to the point of, well, maybe that didn't happen. Fine. Well, I can tell you, if you trust me, I've seen people who've had miracles happen to them and they bounce back on it. They go, I don't know what they do. They put it out of their mind. They come up with some other solution. If you don't want God, it doesn't matter what anyone shows you. And that's fine to a degree. Go to hell. That's your choice. Go ahead and do that. Someone else will hopefully enjoy God's love and mercy and take your spot. I don't know. But I'll get back to what I was saying. Went on a bit of a rant there. The Bible, for anyone who does their homework, is one of the, if it is the oldest, I would have to say it is the oldest kept and recorded document throughout history. And just that fact alone, the fact that it has survived. Think about other things like hieroglyphs, or like a slab of like an unknown language. There's little fragments of these little historic things, little pieces of it, right? And we're like, oh, what does that mean? That's so wonderful. That's so curious. Yeah, you have entire freaking set. You have a whole thing like this that survived thousands of years. Old Testament. All good, basically entirely intact, minus a few little pieces. The discrepancy, the difference between that, like a stone tablet with all this, compared to like a whole complete book. That must tick something off in your mind, be like, suspicious how it, above all other things, survived. Sure, you could say, well, it's just a chance, or well kept, or it was loved more than those things, or it was a greater civilization and they took better care of it. Great, sure. Then you'd have to admit to the fact that it was written by an old-ass civilization. And for the longest time, they still keep holding on to it, be like, yeah, it's the truth. For thousands of years, no one comes along and goes in that community and tribe. Well, most of them don't. Some of the ones who have lost their biscuits, maybe, come along and be like, oh, you know what, this is just a fairy tale. It's silly. No, they go, no, this is history. Like, that's why we wrote it. Don't you find that strange? But let's go back to even the New Testament. That wasn't a long time ago. The New Testament, again, not even 2,000 years ago. No, not yet. If the dates are understood. Not even 2,000 years ago, nearly. That is a short time frame. That is such a small time frame, right? That's not, oh, long ago and we can't trust it anymore. No, but I'll trust, the universe started 13.7 billion years ago. And there were dinosaurs that were around 100 million years ago. Jurassic, Thoracic, Strangulastic period. But no, 2,000 years ago, when it's near perfectly preserved in hundreds of different forms and copies, oh no, I can't trust that. Why? Because this isn't like the Big Bang where none of us were there. No one saw it. No one recorded it. But yet we say, oh, we're almost certain it happened. Or the dinosaur, whatever, any point before this. any point before the start of the Old Testament, wasn't recorded, and we don't have it. But we're so certain, evolution, yep, Big Bang, yep, and the formation of things, yep, and life, and yep. Where's the proof? Where's the written record of it? No. But yet, when we have a written record of things from such a short period ago that is so well kept, no, that's just, it's not even real, made up. Or that was probably written in like the, 16th century. No, it wasn't. You're being a hypocrite. It is insane. It's literally a record of what, if you're trying to find out what happened in history, what's real, does God exist, it's been recorded and passed down and preserved. The fact that it's been preserved is the amazing thing to me. And that's like what Christ says. Well, that's happened. Getting back onto it, any reasonable, sensible, and majority historians will say, yes, New Testament is historically accurate. And yes, there was a Jesus of Nazareth. They don't like to go on to the fact that he was the Christ, because that then doesn't sit well. But almost everyone agree, do your homework, that studies this stuff for their entire life, and there's so much resource, there's so much to study, and it's such a short time ago, agrees, yes, Jesus was around. There was a dude called Jesus, and he did these things, and these are collaborated, through other texts, not just the Bible itself. Well, where do you go from that? Oh, well, maybe the miracles that he did weren't true, or they were exaggerated, or Moving on from the Bible. The next thing I would go to are miracles, especially miracles witnessed by a large number of people. I'm talking about things like Fatima. And I'll use Fatima because there are a lot. I'll just stick with Fatima for now. Yeah, the miracle of the sun and the apparitions at Fatima. We'll just use the miracle of the sun, because that was observed by, depending on the numbers, thousands, if not a bit more than 10,000 people. All different types of people as well, not just all Catholics. You had a miraculous thing happen that would be near, basically for the time, impossible to pull off. It's not like you can do some magic to, science magic to make the sun bounce around in the sky. Something that is recorded to not happen naturally, doesn't just happen. It's not like, oh yeah, every 150 years the sun does a little jig in the sky. No, right? So it's something that never happens, that was predicted to happen, and that thousands of people witnessed. And we're talking about reporters, we're talking about government officials, we're talking about policemen, we're talking about the country people, and it was recorded. It was written in newspapers. The press was already invented by this time, because it was, what was Fatima, like 18 something? I should know, but I don't. It was not long ago. World War One. I'll put the information on screen. But it was really recent. The press was invented. It was you can find newspapers writing about it of the time that it happened. You can find other documents. You can find things written by like the police officers and the mayors and the doctors and things about it. It happened. And not just like one person, like, oh, I saw it. A whole community of all different peoples, of faith and non-faith people, witnessed it. And it wasn't some small thing like the sun went, eh. For minutes, it would look like the sun was going to tumble to the earth. Everyone was like, this is the end. That's massive. So Explain that for me. What do you want? Oh, maybe I would love this one. Oh, mass hysteria. Oh, I could. If I was going to swear, this would be the time I could swear, but I won't. But get lost. Is mass hysteria a thing? Yes. Common sense would say that is something that is very, very, very unlikely to be mass hysteria. Because mass hysteria, as I understand, I haven't done a full deep dive into it, happens under very specific types of circumstances in very closed areas where you can't get further information. It's like locked in and this is all you know. You have the apparition of Lourdes, another miracle site, public one. And I'll just put simply, the miraculous healing records are recorded and you can find them if you really, really want. Go find the doctor's records, again, from believing people and non-believing people going, we can't explain how this happened. And guess what? To this day, we still can't explain how it happened. It's not a lack of medical knowledge. It was nope, still can't do it. Doesn't make sense. If you really want to look it up, go look it up. Same with all of these miracles. Just type in, find a Wikipedia page, biggest miracles ever to happen, and go through them, criticize them, think about them, do what you want to do. Find the big ones that are really, really hard to debunk. Use your humility and common sense. I won't go on with the miracles one much longer because it's something that is so easy to find out. If you want to find it, don't watch a silly YouTube video of someone looking for clicks. Go do a bit of research. Find the actual documents. Find the actual written things. Okay, find out where they're written and recorded. Have a look at them. Wow, that's more convincing than someone like me telling you about them, because you just have to believe what I'm saying, which is harder to believe the actual original stuff. On to the next one. This one's just a bit more simple and personal, and it's just your conscience. Almost every single person feels that this reality is not it. Life, being born, go through life, death, that's it. A lot of people want to believe that that's the case, and I'll talk about that in a different video. But most people genuinely, especially when you're first trying to understand reality, before it gets to the point where you get spooked and you're like, nah, and you have to believe a delusion or believe some altered version of reality to make you feel comfortable and sleep at night. Most people feel that this isn't it. That doesn't make sense. How? Why? This is an accident. Why can I comprehend that? Why do I feel good and bad about that? What is the point? Would it make more sense? Again, it's not a massive argument or like a spearhead argument, but it makes personal sense that, again, with the scientific realm of not possible or doesn't make sense, if life is just an accident, just this perfect, beautifully orchestrated and balanced accident, and you just evolved above any other creature in our reality that we know, to comprehend such things as what is reality, and then all it is that you die and that's it? What the flip is the point? If that is what you believe, now don't take this literally, but a part of me wants to say, if that's what you believe, kill yourself now. What is the point? There is none. And the argument, it's not about me, it's about the human species, it's about passing on to my generation. I'm not sure, Mr. Science Bro, how your brain thinks, but don't you understand the heat death of the universe? Don't you understand that eventually nothing will exist in a form that is sustainable for life? So your generation doesn't matter, because everybody dies in your perception. So it is valueless. It is meaningless. But evolution has done us a big solid, a big yeah bro meme of, I'll let you just anxiety yourself away in life contemplating the possibilities of this, because that's such a useful evolutionary trait, and then you'll just die and then go to nothingness. Oh wait, there's that word again, nothingness. Nothingness doesn't exist. Never has. So how do you go into nothingness? The other side of that is it's such a sad and ridiculous thing. And I'm not saying it's a good argument or a good reason to be like, oh, I don't like the idea that if I die, it's just big eternal sleep and that's it, my life has no value. Therefore, I want to believe in God because heaven sounds like a better idea. Yeah, well, hell exists too, so you gotta be careful of that one. It's not a nice idea. So therefore, I'm going to believe in God in some facet because that makes me feel happy and fluffy on the inside. No, not very good argument. But this is where I go into Pascal's wager. Now, Pascal's wager, stop right now. Pascal's wager is lacking. It just needed to go one more step and then it's done and it's complete and monolithic, basically. Because what I read about Pascal, I thought Pascal's wager is what I thought it was before I even knew what Pascal's wager was, because I thought about this way before, because it's just common sense, like it's how reality is. And then I read what Pascal's wager is and I'm like, that's worse. That's just not good. But most people know it as Pascal's wager, but it's not the complete thing. Going back to it, like I've said many times, there's only one reality, one truth, one happening, right? One timeline, let's say. When you die, because I'll talk about the other fantasies that people have extending their life, or maybe in the future people have, well, not you, you're going to die, okay? We're all going to die. And even if life-sustaining stuff is invented today, eventually you will die because the universe won't be able to sustain life at some point. When you die, either something happens after death or nothing happens after death. That's it. That's as simple as reality is. Because that's the big crux of this. Does God exist? Well, I'll know when I die. Yeah, you will. But it'll be too late. But the easy thing that anyone with common sense, because it's not a complex thing, because that's how reality works. Either I open the door and there's a brick wall behind the door and it doesn't go anywhere, haha, fooled you, or the door leads somewhere. Now that leading somewhere might be just this tiny room, but it still leads somewhere. It also could be a whole new reality. So when you die, either there's nothing or there's something. And I'm not even talking there's heaven and hell or this, that, and the other. There is something. You could even talk about reincarnation, which is worse than hell in my opinion. Is it? Yeah, probably. I don't know. Any other thing. Either something happens or nothing happens. As simple as that. So let's go if nothing happens. Because, most of the people here, if you're watching this and probably trying to figure this out, it might be where you're sitting. Nothing happens. Well, great. It doesn't matter what kind of human being you are. When you die, everybody gets an equal piece of nothing garbage, even though nothing is not possible. Everything becomes nothing. Doesn't matter if you're the biggest scum in the world or you're the best person and help everyone so selflessly. You equally gain everything. Oh, isn't that convenient? Do you know why that's convenient and comfortable for people? Because people don't like the idea that they're going to be held accountable. Oh, why should I be held accountable? Well, isn't that funny? Because that's how our society works. Why does our society work that way? Maybe because we're made in the image of God and God is the manufacturer of ideas and morals and laws and we're just imitating him? Because people should be held accountable and that's what justice is and that feels good to most people who aren't the scum of the earth? But the funny thing is with that, is it's not a very good argument, because even if I'm the greatest, I'm a saint, let's say, well, it doesn't matter, because when I die, if there's nothing, I can't sit there and go, oh, where's God? What a letdown. No, because there's apparently nothing. I won't be able to comprehend that. It won't matter. So it doesn't matter what type of life you live. You become absolutely worthless, and your life is pointless at that regard, at that moment. Now, on the other hand, if something happens, what is that something? What is it? What happens? It's there's an infinite possibility. It's like being on a game show. Do you choose this door or do you choose that door? And it doesn't matter what door you choose, something's behind the door. And is it going to be a bear that, tears me in pieces and, makes me suffer miserably before I die? Or is it going to be lots of money? Who cares? Or the people you love? And if you don't have the humility and common sense to understand that that's it in a logical, mathematical, common sense and moral way, none of them have any value. Because if you become nothing, get this through your head. If life is nothing, you die and become nothing, it has no value. It is not worth thinking about. It's not worth postulating about. It's not worth doing any math or putting anything towards, because it is nothing. So what it's like, it's less than comprehending zero, because zero has value. Zero has meaning. So it's worthless. But if there is something, that is literally the only thing worth thinking about. Does that not make sense to you? It is the only thing worth thinking about because it is the only possibility. Because nothing is not a possibility. It's just nothing. But a possibility of something happening. Does that not make sense? How does that not make sense to every human being? That is the only thing worth thinking about, because if something happens, that's the only thing that is worth thinking about, preparing for, contemplating, and trying to figure out. It's like if someone said to you, if your teacher said, there is not going to be a test and ever a test, and you can be sure, in your entire time during this course or this study, would you ever study for a test that doesn't exist? No. And if you thought, oh, maybe they're tricking me, and then your course finished, and you studied for years, your whole life, and there was never a test, you'd be like, that was pointless. Yeah, that's what nothing is. That's what death is. Nothing was wasted. But if your teacher said, there might be a test, there might be a test, now I'm not going to tell you if there is or there isn't, and you're like, oh, okay. And even if you took them at their word, or maybe there's a test, it would only be logical. The only logical thing to do would be to prepare in whatever capacity you can. Because if you didn't and you're like, nah, there's not going to be a test, and then at the 70th year of your course, they go, here's the test. You're in big trouble. You're done. And the person that studied in whatever way was like, okay, well, here's the test thing. I hope I do okay. I'm an idiot, but I did the best I could. So at least I can give it a shot. To me, that is all a person should need, is the possibility of God. Because the only other possibility is nothing. Because reality can only exist if God exists or if he does not. And if God does not exist, then nothing exists and can't exist. But let's magic it somehow does. Well, then nothing is what you go back into. Not possible, but whatever. It is worthless. It has no value. From the start of it to the end of it are exactly the same. Nothing. So the middle part might as well never have existed. So it has no value. So the only thing that you should need is that there is a possibility of God. Because here's a fun little fact. You cannot prove God doesn't exist because you would need to be greater than God to prove it. Because you would need to comprehend something that is greater than the universe to prove that it doesn't exist. So people are like, oh, I'm an atheist, I know that God doesn't exist. You're an absolute moron. You're an arrogant moron. And I guess that is the reason why you can't sit there and go, like, if I had to prove God, it means I need to understand God, which means I can't do that. Yeah, no joke. So that would lead into the next video I would do is, so which God? Who is God? What is God? That's a good question. That's a real good question. So if you have any, like I said in my other video, I guess I'll say it at the end of every video, if you have a question, a genuine question, leave it and I'll answer it. Or if you have a subject you would like me to talk about or hear, not my opinion. I don't give opinions. I'm not here to give an opinion. Opinion is a subjective, near valueless. It's not. It's nowhere near as valuable as objective reality, truth, and fact. But if you have a topic that you would like me to talk about, you're welcome to share that too. And if I'm interested, I'll do it. Anyway, love you and God bless.